You are bored right now. Maybe not this exact second, but you are recently. You picked up your phone for no reason. You opened the fridge and stared into it even though you were not hungry. You clicked on something you did not care about just to feel something moving. Boredom is so familiar to you that it barely registers as a problem anymore. It is just background noise, the hum beneath modern life. But here is what nobody tells you. For most of human history, boredom as you know it simply didn't exist. And understanding why reveals something quietly devastating about the world you are living in now. Start with what boredom actually is. Psychologist John Eastwood at York University has spent years studying boredom and describes it as the aversive experience of wanting but being unable to engage in satisfying activity. That word wanting is important. Boredom is not rest. It is not peace. It is the sensation of a mind that needs something to attach to and cannot find it. It is hunger, but for meaning, for stimulation, for a sense that what you are doing matters right now. Your brain generates this feeling as a signal, a push. It is trying to move you towards something better. The problem is that in the modern world, that signal fires constantly, and nothing you reach for quite satisfies it. Your ancestors had a different problem entirely. A hunter-gatherer living 50,000 years ago was not understimulated. The opposite was closer to the truth. The environment around them was dense with information that demanded constant reading. Anthropologist Louis Liebenberg, who has spent decades studying tracking among the San people of southern Africa, describes the cognitive load of tracking a single animal as comparable to solving a complex scientific problem in real time. You are reading broken grass stems, disturbed soil, the angle of a hoof print, the time since it was made. You are building a mental model of another creature's mind, predicting its next move, revising your theory with every new piece of evidence. This is not simple work. It is deeply absorbing work. The kind your brain was designed to find satisfying. And it was not just tracking. Everything in that world required presence. Gathering plants meant knowing which ones, at what stage of growth, in what season, near what kind of soil, after what kind of rainfall. Building shelter meant reading material, understanding structure, solving problems with your hands in real time. Tending a fire meant constant attention. Even walking through an unfamiliar landscape meant sustained perceptual engagement, scanning, noticing, remembering. The ancient world was not boring because it was relentlessly, endlessly real. But what about the downtime? Because there was downtime. What did your ancestors do when the work was done? They talked. This sounds almost laughably simple until you sit with what conversation meant in that world. Developmental psychologist Michael Tomasello at Duke University has argued that the human capacity for shared intentionality, the ability to think together, to build a joint understanding of the world with another mind, is the single most distinctive feature of human cognition. Language did not evolve, so your ancestors could schedule meetings. It evolved so they could do something no other animal could do. Pool minds. Share an invisible world of ideas, memories, and possibilities with another person sitting across a fire. When your ancestors talked, they were not filling silence. They were doing something cognitively extraordinary, and it absorbed them completely. They also played. Play in hunter-gatherer societies was not something that stopped at a certain age. Adults played. Games involving skill, aim, speed, and memory. Competitions that sharpened abilities useful for survival but wrapped in pleasure and laughter. Anthropologist Kim Sterling has written about the centrality of playful behavior in forager cultures, noting that many games were direct rehearsals for real skills, hunting, navigation, conflict resolution, performed in a low-stakes register that made learning feel effortless. Your brain's reward system does not distinguish sharply between productive practice and play. That is not a flaw in the design. That is the design. Then there was making things. Your ancestors made things constantly. Tools shaped from stone and bone, clothing stitched from hide, baskets woven from grass, beads carved from shell and strewn together. Not always because something was broken or needed replacing. Sometimes simply because the hands wanted something to do and the mind wanted to see something take shape. Neuroscientist Kelly Lambert at the University of Richmond has researched what she calls effort-driven rewards, the particular satisfaction that comes from making something physical with your hands. She has found that this kind of hands-on creation activates a circuit in the brain involving the motor cortex, the sensory systems, and the reward pathways in a way that few other activities replicate. Your ancestors were bathed in this feeling daily. You almost never are. And then there was the world itself. Modern life insulates you from weather, from seasons, from animals, from the thousand small unpredictable events that the natural world generates continuously. Your ancestors had no such insulation. A sudden change in wind direction meant something. A bird call they did not recognize meant something. The behavior of a herd on the horizon meant something. The world was speaking constantly in a language they had spent their whole lives learning to read. There was no gap between them and reality to fill. Reality was right there, pressing in, requiring attention. What you call boredom requires a gap. A distance between your mind and the world around it. That gap is a modern invention. There is also something worth saying about social density. In a band of 20 to 50 people, you were never truly alone with your thoughts for long. Someone was always nearby. There was always something to observe, someone to engage, some small drama or negotiation or moment of tenderness unfolding within view. Loneliness and boredom are closely related. Both are signals of disconnection. Both drive you towards something more. Your ancestors were embedded in a web of relationships so constant and so textured that the kind of hollow emptiness modern boredom produces simply had no room. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who developed the theory of flow, described it as a state of complete absorption in a challenging task that matches your current level of skill. He spent decades documenting when people experienced it and what triggered it. What he found was that flow was most common in activities involving real-time feedback, a clear goal, and a meaningful challenge. Hunter-gatherer life was structured around exactly these conditions, not by design, but by necessity. The ancient world produced flow almost by accident. The modern world has to engineer it deliberately and still usually fails. So when did boredom appear? Historian Patricia Mayer-Spacks traces the modern concept of boredom to the 18th century, when the word itself entered English and the experience began to be widely described in diaries, letters, and literature. This was not a coincidence. It coincided with the rise of industrial labor, with work that was repetitive, disconnected from nature, stripped of skill, and performed in isolation from meaningful community. The factory separated effort from reward, hands from outcome, person from purpose. Your brain, designed for the textured richness of a forager's world, found itself locked into something narrow, predictable, and hollow. It generated a new signal for this new problem. That signal is what you call boredom. And now you carry that signal into a world of infinite distraction. You reach for your phone. You open the fridge. You scroll. Each of these actions promises the thing your brain is asking for. Stimulation, engagement, connection, meaning. And each of them delivers just enough to quiet the signal briefly, without ever actually satisfying it. Researcher, bored and brilliant author Manas Almarodi, who has explored the neuroscience of boredom in depth, argues that constant low-level stimulation actually prevents the brain from reaching the deeper states of processing that make life feel meaningful. You are not killing boredom when you scroll. You are feeding it. Your ancestors did not kill boredom. They never had to. They lived in a world so textured, so relational, so demanding of real attention, that the particular emptiness you are fighting never had a chance to grow. The richness was not something they sought. It was something they were inside of. Always. You felt restless earlier today. Maybe you reached for something easy. Maybe it helped for a moment. But your brain is still generating that signal right now, the same one your ancestors never needed to answer, because their world answered it for them before the question could fully form. The boredom you feel is not weakness. It is a 300,000-year-old mind looking for a world that no longer exists. What part of this video surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell notification so you never miss another fascinating story. Your support helps us bring more stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.